What happened when conservative commentator Mark Levin attempted to verbally ambush Congresswoman Jasmine Crocket on live television shocked everyone watching. No one expected her response. Calm, measured, but absolutely devastating. In just 30 seconds, she dismantled his entire argument with facts, leaving the veteran talk show host visibly rattled for the first time in his career. "I came prepared, Mr. Levine," Crockett said, pulling out documentation nobody knew she had. "And unlike your claims, these facts aren't up for debate." The normally unflappable Levin was caught completely off guard. The exchange that followed would go viral within minutes, with political analysts calling it the most effective shutdown of misinformation in recent political memory. Like and subscribe to see more political confrontations where facts triumph over rhetoric. As viewers watched this unfold in real time, social media exploded with reactions. This wasn't just another political squabble, it was the moment a rising political star demonstrated exactly why she had earned her reputation as one of the sharpest legal minds in Congress. What made this confrontation particularly remarkable was that Crockett hadn't come looking for a fight. She had arrived expecting a policy discussion, only to be met with aggressive accusations. Her composed response transformed what could have been just another shouting match into a masterclass in effective political communication. The tension in the studio was palpable as Levin, realizing his usual tactics weren't working, attempted to reclaim control of the conversation. But Crockett's next revelation would completely change the trajectory of the discussion and potentially the public's perception of both figures. Mark Levin had built his career on being the forceful, uncompromising voice of conservative outrage. His radio show and television appearances consistently featured pointed criticism of Democratic politicians with little room for nuance or rebuttal. His supporters praised his directness, critics called it bullying. Either way, his confrontational style had made him a powerful figure in political media. For months, Levin had been particularly focused on Congresswoman Jasmine Crocket, a former civil rights attorney and rising star in Democratic politics. He had labeled her radical, dangerous, and unqualified across numerous broadcasts. His criticisms had grown increasingly personal, moving beyond policy disagreements to questioning her intelligence and integrity. Crockett, meanwhile, had established herself as a formidable presence in the House of Representatives. After a distinguished legal career defending voting rights and civil liberties, she had brought her analytical precision and passionate advocacy to Congress. Her colleagues recognized her legal expertise and her ability to cut through rhetorical fog to the heart of complex issues. What viewers didn't know was that Crockett had been meticulously documenting every claim Levin had made about her. Unlike many politicians who either ignored attacks or responded emotionally, the Congresswoman had applied her legal background to build what amounted to a case file on Levin's misrepresentations. The stakes of this confrontation extended far beyond personal reputations. In an era of heightened political polarization, this exchange represented the broader struggle between fact-based discourse and emotional appeal. For Levin's audience, his authority as a trusted voice was on the line. For Crockett, it was an opportunity to demonstrate that substantive engagement could prevail over personal attacks. More importantly, their confrontation had implications for how political media operates. If Levin's approach, making bold, often personal accusations without substantial evidence, could be effectively countered, it might signal a shift in what viewers expect from political commentary. The political media landscape had long rewarded the loudest, most provocative voices. Ratings and engagement typically flowed to those who generated heat rather than light. Both Levin and Crockett understood this dynamic, but they had chosen fundamentally different approaches to navigating it. When the producers had booked both figures for the segment, they had anticipated fireworks. What they hadn't expected was how prepared Crockett would be to transform what could have been just another shouting match into something far more consequential. As the segment began, viewers could see the contrast immediately. Levin arrived with talking points and righteous indignation. Crockett came with evidence, specific citations, and a strategy. The difference would prove decisive. The confrontation escalated when Levin, visibly irritated by Crockett's composed initial response, raised his voice and cut her off mid-sentence. "Congresswoman, let's talk about your radical voting record," Levin said, shuffling papers dramatically. "You've supported policies that would bankrupt this nation and destroy the American way of life. The American people deserve to know who you really are." Crockett smiled slightly, not dismissively, but with the confidence of someone who had anticipated this move. Mr. Levin, I'm happy to discuss my voting record, but first, let's clarify something. You've made 37 specific claims about me on your shows in the past 3 months. I've documented each one. She slid a binder across the table. The camera zoomed in to show meticulous organization, tabs, highlighting, and cross-references. Page 4 contains the first 10 instances where you misrepresented my positions. Each annotation includes the correct information with citation. The host, sensing the segment veering away from the planned format, attempted to intervene. Perhaps we could focus on current policy issues. Levin interrupted, his face reddening. This is a political stunt. The Congresswoman is trying to avoid discussing her radical agenda by attacking me personally. Not at all, Crockett replied calmly. I'm addressing your statements directly. For example, on May 12th, you claimed I voted to defund the police. The congressional record shows I voted for H.R. 1280, which actually increased police funding by $750 million, 0 cents, while implementing accountability measures. She turned to a specific page. The text of the bill is here, along with my voting record. The studio fell silent for a moment. Levin shuffled through his own notes, clearly searching for a response. The host, recognizing the unexpected drama unfolding, decided to let it continue. That's a technicality, Levin eventually countered. The bill was part of the radical left's agenda to undermine law enforcement. And what about your comments on taxation? You've advocated for policies that would crush small businesses. Crockett nodded thoughtfully. I expected you might pivot to taxation. Page 12 addresses those claims specifically. She turned to another section of her binder. On your March 3rd broadcast, you stated, I support a 90% tax rate on small businesses. That's simply fabricated. I've consistently supported tax relief for businesses with fewer than 50 employees while advocating for closing corporate loopholes for companies making over $100 million, 0 cents, in annual profit. Social media was erupting in real time. Clips of the exchange were already circulating, with viewers expressing surprise at both Crockett's methodical approach and Levin's increasing discomfort. Political commentators from across the spectrum were weighing in, many noting the rarity of seeing prepared evidence so effectively deployed in a live exchange. Levin, recognizing his typical approach wasn't working, shifted tactics. The American people don't need binders and technicalities, Congresswoman. They see the results of your party's policies every day. Inflation, crime, open borders. These are the real issues. I appreciate you raising those concerns, Crockett replied. They are indeed real issues affecting Americans. That's why accuracy matters so much. When you tell your audience that I've taken positions I haven't, you're not just attacking me, you're misinforming them about policies that impact their lives. The host, sensing a potential breaking point, called for a commercial break. As the cameras cut away, viewers could see Levin leaning toward his producer, gesturing animatedly. Crockett remained seated, reviewing her notes. When the broadcast resumed, the tension had visibly escalated. Levin had regained some composure and came armed with a new line of attack. During the break, my team confirmed that you were one of 72 co-sponsors of the Green New Deal legislation, which independent analysts say would cost American taxpayers trillions and eliminate millions of jobs in the energy sector. Do you deny this? Crockett didn't miss a beat. I was indeed a co-sponsor of H.R. 109, and I'm glad you've raised it. She turned to yet another section of her binder. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office analysis of the resolution is summarized here. It differs significantly from the figures you cited. I've also included impact assessments from the Department of Energy that project net job creation, particularly in states like West Virginia and Pennsylvania. The camera caught Levin glancing at his producer again, visibly frustrated. This wasn't proceeding according to the familiar script where accusations could be launched without detailed rebuttal. The host, recognizing the unusual dynamics at play, leaned into the tension. Mr. Levin, it seems the Congresswoman has come unusually prepared to address specific claims. How do you respond to her documentation? This was the moment the confrontation reached its pivotal point. Levin had a choice: engage with the evidence Crockett had presented, or dismiss it and risk appearing evasive. This whole exercise is theatrical distraction, Levin declared, pushing the binder away without opening it. The Congresswoman can come with all the papers she wants, but the American people see through these Washington tactics. Crockett's response was measured but decisive. Mr. Levin, I'm a former trial attorney. In court, when someone refuses to examine evidence, it generally speaks volumes. But let me make this simpler. She turned to face the camera directly. I'd like to address the viewers, particularly those who regularly watch Mr. Levin's programs. I respect that you may disagree with my policies, and that's completely valid in a democracy. What I'm addressing today isn't about political differences, it's about factual accuracy. The production team split the screen to show both Levin's reaction and Crockett's address to the audience. For example, she continued, Mr. Levin stated on his April 17th broadcast that I never prosecuted a single case before entering politics. She held up a document. This is my case record from the Dallas County District Attorney's Office showing the 137 cases I prosecuted. This isn't a matter of interpretation or political spin. It's a verifiable fact. Levin attempted to interrupt, but Crockett continued with remarkable composure. Similarly, on May 3rd, Mr. Levin told his audience that I refused to meet with law enforcement representatives in my district. She displayed another document. These are the meeting minutes from my regular roundtables with police chiefs, sheriff's deputies, and community safety advocates that I've held monthly since taking office. The host, recognizing the power of this moment, asked Levin directly, would you like to respond to these specific points? Levin's typical confidence had visibly eroded. The Congresswoman is cherry-picking statements out of context while ignoring the broader truth about her radical agenda. Actually, Crockett interjected, I've addressed the full context of each statement. Page 23 includes complete transcripts of the segments where these claims appeared, not just isolated quotes. She turned to another section, and regarding my policy positions, I've included my full voting record and public statements on each issue you've raised. I welcome substantive debate about my actual positions rather than the mischaracterizations. At this point, something remarkable happened. Rather than continuing to defend his previous statements, Levin shifted tactics entirely. Look, maybe I've been given some incorrect information about your background, he conceded reluctantly, but that doesn't change the fact that your policy positions are dangerous for America. This partial acknowledgement, the closest thing to a retraction many viewers had ever heard from the combative commentator, sent shockwaves through political media. Clips of the moment immediately went viral with the hashtag #ReceiptsCrockett trending within minutes. Crockett recognized the significance of this concession and responded graciously. I appreciate that acknowledgement, Mr. Levin. As public figures, we all sometimes work with imperfect information. What matters is how we respond when confronted with corrections. She closed her binder. Now, if you'd like to discuss my actual policy positions and why I believe they would benefit Americans, including those who disagree with me politically, I'm more than happy to have that conversation. The host, sensing a potential breakthrough, asked, Mr. Levin, would you like to proceed with a policy discussion based on the Congresswoman's actual positions rather than the disputed characterizations? Levin, backed into an unfamiliar corner, nodded stiffly. Fine, let's talk about your position on border security, which, by your own admission, involves providing pathways to citizenship that many Americans consider amnesty. That's a fair starting point, Crockett replied, and notice the difference. You've accurately characterized my position as supporting pathways to citizenship, which I do, rather than claiming I support open borders, which I don't. That's all I've been asking for, accuracy in how my views are represented, even when you disagree with them. For the remainder of the segment, something unprecedented occurred. A substantive policy discussion unfolded between two figures from opposite ends of the political spectrum. They disagreed sharply on almost every issue, but the conversation remained focused on actual policies rather than personal attacks or misrepresentations. Viewers witnessed what political discourse could look like when accountability for factual claims was enforced, not through censorship or silencing, but through methodical, evidence-based correction. As the segment concluded, Crockett offered a final thought. Mr. Levin, despite our profound disagreements, I want to thank you for ultimately engaging with the substance of these issues. Your audience deserves that level of respect, and so do mine. The triumph wasn't about humiliating an opponent. It was about elevating the conversation to a place where genuine democratic debate could occur, grounded in facts rather than caricatures. Within hours, the exchange between Crockett and Levin had become the most viewed political clip of the year. Received Crockett and Prepared Crockett dominated social media trends, with millions sharing segments of the confrontation. News programs across networks featured analysis of what many were calling a watershed moment in political media. Panel discussions debated whether this exchange would have lasting impact on how political figures approach confrontations and how media outlets verify claims before broadcasting them. What we witnessed wasn't just a personal victory for Representative Crockett, noted one prominent media critic. It was a masterclass in how to combat misinformation without descending into the same tactics. She didn't match anger with anger or accusation with accusation. She met unsupported claims with verified fact. Several fact-checking organizations published comprehensive reviews of the exchange, verifying Crockett's corrections and documentation. These analyses further solidify the impression that this hadn't been merely a matter of political differences, but a genuine case of factual misrepresentation being effectively addressed. The response from Levin's audience was particularly noteworthy. While many remained loyal supporters, a significant number expressed surprise at how the exchange had unfolded. Comment sections and call-in segments revealed viewers questioning whether they had been given accurate information about other political figures as well. "I still support most of Mark's positions," one longtime listener wrote, "but this made me realize I should be verifying claims about politicians rather than taking commentators' words at face value, regardless of which side they're on." Crockett, for her part, used the increased attention strategically. Rather than taking a victory lap or attacking Levin further, she launched a facts-first initiative, creating an easily accessible database of her actual voting record, policy positions, and public statements. "Disagreement is essential in a democracy," she explained in a press conference, "but those disagreements should be based on what people actually believe and have done, not on distortions or mischaracterization." The impact extended beyond these two individuals. Several members of Congress, inspired by Crockett's approach, began publishing similar resource pages with their unfiltered voting records and position statements. Political communications firms reported increased demand for opposition research, focused on factual accuracy rather than merely finding damaging material. Media outlets, too, began adjusting their approaches. Several major networks announced enhanced fact-checking protocols for political commentary shows, with some implementing real-time verification for certain types of claims. Perhaps most significantly, viewers and listeners became more discerning consumers of political content. Comment sections and social media reflected a growing expectation for evidence when serious accusations were made against public figures. Levin himself faced a pivotal choice in the aftermath. Initial reports suggested he was furious about how the exchange had played out, blaming his production team for inadequate preparation. For several days, he avoided addressing the incident directly on his programs. When he finally did speak about it, his approach surprised many observers. Rather than attacking Crockett further or dismissing the exchange as insignificant, he acknowledged that the incident had prompted reflection. "I've built my career on challenging politicians and holding them accountable," he told his audience. "That mission is too important to be undermined by factual errors. Moving forward, we're implementing additional verification processes for claims made on this program." This wasn't a complete transformation. Levin remained a fierce critic of progressive policies and politicians, including Crockett. But there was a discernible shift in how he framed his criticisms, focusing more on documented policy positions and less on characterizations of individuals. The most lasting impact, however, was on public expectations. The confrontation had demonstrated that political discourse didn't have to be reduced to shouting matches or unsubstantiated attacks, that substantive, evidence-based engagement was not only possible, but potentially more compelling. 6 months after the exchange, a study by a media research firm found that programs featuring factual substantiation for political claims had seen audience growth, while those relying primarily on emotional appeals without evidential support had experienced decline. The Levin Crockett exchange may have marked a turning point, the study concluded, not because it changed anyone's political views, but because it raised the bar for what audiences expect from political commentary, regardless of which side of the spectrum it comes from. For Crockett herself, the incident became a defining moment in her political career, not because she had won a confrontation, but because she had modeled an approach to political communication that prioritized facts without sacrificing conviction. Her star continued to rise within her party, with many citing her effectiveness in communicating complex policy positions clearly and accurately. The final indicator of the exchange's significance came nearly a year later when Levin and Crockett appeared together at a forum on political communication at a major university. Though they remained on opposite sides of virtually every policy question, they found common ground on one principle: that democracy functions best when disagreements are based on accurate representations of opposing views. "We can be adversaries without being enemies," Crockett noted in her remarks, "and we can be forceful advocates for our positions without distorting those of our opponents." Levin nodded in agreement. A simple gesture that would have seemed unimaginable before their confrontation had changed the landscape of political discourse. In political media, the exchange had become shorthand for preparation and accountability. Getting Crocketted entered the lexicon as a term for what happens when someone makes accusations without factual support and is methodically corrected with evidence. The lesson wasn't that political disagreements could or should disappear. It was that those disagreements could be more productive, more illuminating, and ultimately more beneficial to democracy when grounded in factual accuracy. And that perhaps was the most important revelation of all, that in an era often characterized by division and disillusionment, there remained the possibility of raising the standard of political discourse, one factual correction at a time. Like and subscribe to see more political confrontations where facts triumph over rhetoric. We bring you the most impactful political exchanges that cut through the noise and get to the truth.